Hebrews 6:11 through 12 in the NIV says, "We want each of you to show this same diligence to the very end, so that what you hope for may be fully realized. We do not want you to become lazy, but to imitate those who through faith and patience inherit what has been promised." Patience is defined as the capacity to accept or to tolerate delay, trouble, or suffering without getting angry or upset. It's one of the fruits of the spirits that's mentioned in Galatians. So we all have the capacity to have patience. And Paul goes on in chapter 6 to give us an example of someone that did have patience and faith that we could imitate. And that someone is Abraham. God promised Abraham when he was 75 years old that he would have descendants who outnumbered the stars in the sky. And it wasn't until Abraham was 100 that Isaac was born. So it took 25 years until the first sign of this promise started to be fulfilled. Abraham had 25 years of faith and patience of trusting God. He didn't do it perfectly. There's some mishaps along the way, such as Hagar and Ishmael. But I like that those are in scripture because they remind us that it's okay if we mess up and God will still remain faithful, even if we have to say sorry and try again. I also like that Paul says it's through faith and patience. Patience is important, but I believe it's only possible to have patience with faith. So how can we grow our faith? Well, the more that we read scriptures, the more that we see God's faithfulness to fulfill his word to the people in scripture, our faith will grow. The more we acknowledge where God has been working in our life, where he has moved, our faith will grow. I do think we all have areas that we need faith, we need patience, we're trying to trust God in those areas. But I also think that we all have areas where God has shown himself to be faithful time and time again. And so if we remind ourselves of the times he has been faithful, our faith will grow. I've heard it said, instead of focusing on what God isn't doing, focus on what he is doing. Or another way to put it is, instead of focusing on your lack, focus on the blessing. So for an example from my life is, when I was single, it was easy to focus on the fact that I was single and that everyone was getting married and I wasn't, and time just kept passing. And if I chose to focus on that, I was just depressed and sad and woe is me and crying. But I also had a choice to focus on blessings, and specifically blessings that were in my life because I didn't have what I wanted. So, for example, I got to know my nieces and nephews way better than any of my other siblings were able to, because they all had families that they had to spend their time with and check on and make sure they were okay, where I could just hang out with my nieces and nephews whenever I wanted. I was able to spend 3 months with a cousin and her kids. I could go to coffee shops when I wanted. I remember my married friends always saying, I wish I could go hang out in a coffee shop. I can get an hour here or there, but they had responsibilities that come with that blessing of being married. So I think when we can focus on the blessing instead of the lack, then it's easier to have patience and to keep going and to keep taking one day at a time and put one foot in front of the other and believe that God will do what he says he has done. He will do. So that's my prayer and thought for us today, that we would have patience, do as Paul says, and try to imitate those who through faith and patience inherit what has been promised. Be blessed, ACF.